All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Villainviver podcast. Today we'll be covering episodes 3, 4, and 5 of season 6, our Danganronpa themed season here at Villainviver. So we're going to start off with episode 3. Episode 3 is the episode where we were heading into what turned out to be a very interesting swap. Because when we had this swap, two of our tribes ended up with a 4-1 split based on the OG tribes, one in each direction based on our original tribes, which led to like the very strange situation of Sophie being the only member of her original tribe who she was with. She was in a 4-1 deficit based on OG tribe lines. And I believe we also had...
I think it was Tristan.
We also had, Tristan was the only member of the new yellow tribe from the original pink tribe. So that was two of our three swap tribes had 4-1 divides. And one of the big questions of the episode was going to be whether like either of those players could survive if their tribe went to tribal. So we'll start off with the challenge that we had in the final 15. So this challenge was one of our creative challenges. We like to have creative challenges a couple of times a season. And one of our creative challenges this season is the Create a Monocub challenge. So do the rest of you here have any thoughts about the 3 monocubs that we saw?
The Pixel one was Rob.
Oh yeah.
The one that lost.
I think Mina's was really good, and I'm not saying that from a biased perspective. It actually looks like a genuine monocub that I would see as a monocub in the game, save for them not having a unique eye.
So what did Mina's monocub look like? Which one was that? Which theme was that?
She had the purple one. I think all had the purple one.
Was it the mono coral?
Is that one's the Monoracle one that you're talking about here?
Let me go see. Because
so the 3 that we're talking about here, the 3 monocubs that we are talking about, is we have Monoclub, the DJ monocub. We have Monoracle, the monocub of divination, time manipulation, and psionics. And we have Mona Lisa, the monocub of jokes and charm and art. So those were the 3 monocub themes that our 3 tribes came up with here.
I feel like... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I feel like the middle one definitely deserved to win, so I'm glad it did, because it was really good.
Yeah, so that was the Hajime tribes one. Monoracle ended up a massive lead over the other 2. But to avoid tribal, it ended up becoming a pretty close race between our other 2 tribes. But ultimately, Chiaki is going to be the tribe that's sent to tribal. And let's also talk for a moment about our blackened task for this episode. So the recipient of the task this episode was Naran. And Naran had the task of avoiding his tribe for the first 4 hours immediately after the swap. And let's just say that Naran had a very unorthodox approach to it.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Carlos.
Okay. I was only going to mention in the monocub challenge, I agree with the one that won. For sure could be a monocub, though I understand some people that were like, it has superpowers, like it's not a making a Pokemon challenge, but I think it won by design. It was really really cool. And I don't know, was the Mono Club the DJ one the one that lost the challenge, or was it the one that ended up winning the second immunity?
Oh yeah, Mona Lisa was the one that I liked.
Yeah.
I just had to go back and check
Because
out. I'm sorry, extreme delayed reaction.
I don't remember who if he won or not, but that one I don't know why, but I don't know how he got so many votes because it was so cluttered. As I was watching them, like planning the Mono Cup, they were like, "Oh, let's add this and 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 this." Like there was so many things on it. Like some like the Mono Cups, like if you look at them, they are so simple design.
See, but I
At least
think
that's what I think.
what's important in the Mono Cubs is their little quirks. Mono Kid is the rocker. What?
Yeah, but they don't have so many details, you know.
I mean, we also have to
Yeah, but
remember
it's
that the spectators that we are designing this, who are going to be voting on, are not necessarily all massive Danganronpa fans, which
Yeah.
means that like you have to appeal to a broad audience with a creative challenge like this, even if it's technically not in the spirit of the original Mono Cups from the games. So like I definitely see the desirability of trying to throw a bunch of different features and traits at the wall and seeing what sticks. Because you just want that one sentence in your design that's going to get whatever spectator likes that sentence to want to vote for you in a design challenge like this.
I think the if that one's the one that won the second immunity, the other one I think didn't win because although it's cute the art design, the beats design, just like the game, I think it was too simplistic and didn't have enough. I think that's maybe why they didn't vote, though it was so close.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately what ended up happening too, is that like the Mona Lisa Mono Cub was just a little bit not detailed enough, and that ended up costing him only by a vote or two in the spectator vote. It was a very close vote. So then so Naran had to avoid talking for the first 4 hours, and the way that he did this was honestly one of the most shocking things we've seen in Villain Viver, even in an org that calls itself Villain Viver. Like this was the most galaxy brain unnecessary OTTNN play that I have seen in a while.
It
And to
was
have it
so
coming out of
unnecessary.
nowhere the way it did.
Naran had one of the easiest black and tasks, and they were like the overcomplicated
he
thing.
blew it so out of proportion. I would have straight up just gone, "Hey, I'm gonna be busy for the next few hours. I have something to get done. If I probably won't be able to be reached, but if you absolutely need me, please try and let me know."
Yeah, it's like imagine one of those memes, right? Where you have like the 7-lane highway, and on the left lane you have like, hey, I just got back from the library with a couple books I'd like to read. And on the second lane you have like, hey, I'm having a watch party with some friends. And on the third lane it's like, I've got dinner for my aunt's birthday tonight. And on the fourth lane you have like, I'm taking my dad golfing. And then swerving way over to the far right lane across 7 lanes of traffic is Naran's, I'm sorry,
My
my
cat
cat got run
died.
over with a car. Wink, wink.
Though I have to say one thing, that also had one of the first times that the contestants actually, or the castaways, actually outsmarted us because they were supposed to not send any messages. Like as soon as they accept the task, they can't send any messages. But Naran sent the message before accepting the task.
Yeah, that
So they
Naran just
technically
took
didn't break the rules.
exactly.
So we were like, oh my god, they outsmarted us.
Naran galaxy brained this task so hard and arguably so unnecessarily. I believe that's the only double N we've given out all season on our Edgic.
I
And
think
it was insane.
It
I
was.
think that unnecessary play is going to be his style of gameplay. That's going to be his downfall come late merge.
I mean, that's really like I'm looking at Naran's Edgix trip right now, and not to spoil what we're going to be talking about the next 2 episodes, but at this point in the season, Naran has 4 5s and a 4. And we do not have a history of giving out a whole lot of 5s on our Edgix trip. Naran has 4 5s in 5 episodes. And the thing is, you can't even say that any of those 5s are undeserved.
They aren't undeserved, which is exactly my point. He's a big, flashy player, and people are going to get caught on to him. And I wouldn't be surprised if come late merge, his reputation gets up to him, and he eventually gets snuffed by some of the more underestimated players.
Exactly. So after getting the blackened vote, Naran is not going to end up at this tribal, because this tribal consists of Barney, Toxic, Cat, Mina, and Barney, Toxic, Cat, Mina, and Rose are going to be going on at this tribal here, and it looks like that Toxic might be going home here because we've got Cat and Rose are trying to vote Toxic, and it looks like Mina might be about to go on that side as well. So that would be Cat, Rose, and Mina voting Toxic in what would be theoretically a 3-2 vote. But Barney's still there as well, and Barney has the double vote. So with the double vote, that's going to be a 3-3 vote instead of a 3-2 vote. And what happens here, right? Like in theory, this should be a 3-2, like in favor of that's going to be Mina, Barney, and Toxic against either Cat or Rose. But Mina is flipping to make it a 3-2 the other way. Barney is getting the blackened vote, which is going to make it a 3-3 tie. And one of the interesting things, again, Naran playing like the strong, strategic, flashy game we've seen, Naran thinks about the fact that if Toxic is the target of the other side here, if the vote goes to the 3-3 tie, if Toxic's holding the vote, it wouldn't be able to be used in the revote. But if Barney is, it will be able to be. So like Naran is playing around the possibility of a 3-3 tie where Mina flips and making sure the right person has the extra vote for the revote. Like that's a pretty high level of play. That's not an obvious play to be thinking about.
Yeah, definitely.
Should we get into the results of that tribal?
Funny and sad at the same time at the end that all of that didn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's not going to matter for 2 reasons, right? One, Mina makes a decision that Mina is going to vote according to like the tribe lines. That Mina is going to vote with Barney and with Toxic here, and that's going to make the vote 4-2. But Mina happens to make a little mistake, and by make a little mistake, I mean oversleep, which means that Mina self-votes, but it becomes 3-2-1. It's interesting because a couple of the other contestants here are wondering if Mina like strategically overslept so that she didn't have to choose a side in the vote, where it would be either a 4-2 or a 3-3. But when it's a 3-2-1 with Mina accidentally self-voting, some people were at least wondering, like, did Mina do it so that she can tell both sides she would have voted with them? Now, I don't think Mina was trying to make that play, but the fact that that accusation is at least flying around is like an interesting wrinkle to consider for the results of how this tribal will affect the game.
In the end, I think it really shows how slowly building up social connections over time and being like the one contingency shows how much power you can have in the game in the right circumstances, especially in late pre-merge like we have here.
Oh, exactly. And like this is, now technically this is the 3rd episode of the season, but we really do only have that one more vote before the merge here. Rose is going to go out. We've had a really strong pre-jury overall this season, like between Quinn, Rose, the person we're going to get to in the next episode. Like, we've had
Yeah.
some pretty solid players in our pre-jury here. And
Up
I
until-
don't think
up
Rose was
until
playing a
late in the
terrible
ep-
game.
Up until late in the episode, I was certain that Rose wasn't going home, honestly. I think she was in a really nice position. She had a decent edgic. She was talkative. She told us about all of her plans. Hell, she even made a 40-minute voice confessional.
Yeah, and like I could absolutely see a world where Mina did decide to like stick with Cat and Rose there, and like we get a 3-3 vote. That vote ties. We get a revote. The revote ties. We go to rocks, and like someone like Barney or Cat gets rocked out. Like I could absolutely see a world where that happens. It would not be crazy if that happened, or Mina to get rocked out, of course, too. But like
Mhm.
one of those three getting rocked out is not a crazy outcome for this vote. Like it's very possible that we could have seen pre-merge rocks. We don't see those very often, but we absolutely could have seen it here. So moving from there, we go to episode 4. And episode 4 is going to be the last episode of our swap. And one of the most notable things that happens right at the end of episode 3 is that Abe, Skylar, and Jake form a majority alliance on the Hajime tribe. Now, that's not completely shocking. Like, these three were on the same original tribe. So forming a majority alliance there when Sophie is down 4-1 is not in and of itself notable. But what is notable is that Tanner is on the outs of this 3-person alliance. Right? It's Abe, Skylar, and Jake versus Tanner and Sophie. Is where the lines are breaking down in terms of actual alliances here. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to like necessarily go that way, of course. Like, these alliances are very flexible, especially at this stage of the game. And Abe, in that majority alliance position, gets one of the most entertaining Blackened tasks we've had yet this season, and not of the like catty fair play variety. Right? This is the task where Abe is tasked with starting a fight in tribe chat and concocts this lovely elaborate scheme with Skylar to have fake fight in tribe chat in order to tackle a Blackened task. And the fake fight between the two of them was honestly pretty hilarious, especially because like it was not immediately apparent whether this was a real fight or a fake fight unless you were reading their comps.
Yeah, it got to the point where Gabriel himself was getting a little concerned. And in the end, he said this was a bad idea. Because if it was anyone else besides the two of them, who knows how that would have gone down?
Oh yeah, like if anyone else like got in the middle of that fight, like that actually could have turned like that could have turned not so great if other people had got involved in that fight. But luckily, I think luckily it didn't turn out to be any bigger of a thing than it was.
Sorry, my phone did that thing where it just mutes me for some reason, even though I'm unmuted.
All right. So then
we saying that was so believable. Like I was watching that happening live, and as the host chat, everyone, especially Gabriel, were so worried. Should we step in? Should we step in? We were not reading comps, and they like, oh, imagine not reading comps. And in my head, I didn't send that message, but I was like, if that fight is happening, I don't think I'm going to be reading other chats.
No, exactly. Like, especially if it's like a big popcorn-inducing fight like that has the threat of turning like just out of control enough that like you want to be there with the fire extinguisher if you need it.
Which, honestly, in the end, was a pretty smart move because if I saw that fight happening, I wouldn't think it would be a Blackened task.
And nor would I think that
Especially
like
in this
Abe
org.
and Skylar are actually
That's
like
a
each other's
believable
number
fight.
ones.
That was a believable fight. That's the thing. That's why I was worried. Like, oh my god, if it was someone else like came into the chat and saw that fight, if it wasn't like they didn't notice the stage fight, even Jake's message at the end, I was like, oh, that's so sweet for a staged fight.
Yeah, no, exactly. All right, so let's go to the challenge that we have here, which at Final 14 we have the Hangman Challenge. Carlos, why don't you start us off talking about the Hangman Challenge?
Honestly, this was such a fun challenge. Seriously, I
Seeing
love that
seeing
challenge.
how Hajime and Chiaki flopped was kind of hilarious.
So, so how the challenge went? The first one, like, Nagi completely blew out of the park. They could have actually done in three guesses because Frost actually said, "Oh, it can be Monokuma Files." Um, but they were like, "No, let's guess another letter just to be sure." So they ended up with four guesses. But yeah, Frost was the MVP right there with the challenge. And honestly, the way we did the challenge for this season, I think it can have a Handman be brought into future seasons. It doesn't need to be a live challenge
Yeah, I think the Hangman
because this
Challenge,
was
like,
so good.
as a whole, honestly, was one of our more successful challenges this season, and I do like the way that it turned out. Like, it turned out to be pretty fun. I will say, the number of times I saw the phrase Monokuma wives. Now, I'm not enough of a Danganronpa enthusiast myself to understand quite how funny this is, but Carlos and everyone else who was the big Danganronpa fans apparently find the concept of Monokuma matrimony absolutely hilarious
So
and
let
just
me
like the most ridiculous thing to imagine. So the
just
fact that
not here. I can explain that.
that both of the tribes who did not snipe this challenge in four guesses, basically everyone except Frost, at least considered the fact that this could be Monokuma wives like multiple times over the course of this challenge.
So the funny thing is, it's that they could Google stuff. So if they Googled Monokuma wives, they wouldn't find it. So I don't know why even they would like think of it. That's one thing.
Yeah.
And second, I think that's the reason why they think, oh, Monokuma wives or something. It's because the Monokubs are his kids.
No,
And
exactly.
they call him father. So like, oh, maybe he has a wife. But like,
Or more than one.
and the thing is, who was the one who lost again? Let me check. Okay,
That was
so
the Hajime
Hajime.
tribe.
So Hajime, I was in voice chat and they were like, "Oh my God, we are holding you back so much." You were like, and I was like, "No, don't worry." Like, it was such a fun challenge to host that I would host so many times. Like, I just didn't host Chiaki because I was asleep. It was like 7 a.m. EST or something, uh, and like
Oh, that,
they
that
were
was an
like, "Is that even?"
incredibly fun challenge.
Hajime was like, "Is that even an English word?" And I was like, I was muted and I was laughing. It's file, like it's file. But the thing is, I only noticed afterwards. It's because another thing that maybe stumbled some people, like especially Hajime, it's because Monokuma File doesn't have a specific page on the wiki. They
Yeah.
weren't searching the wiki. They were searching the wiki. Only when I went to grab an image, I was like, wait, this is not the Wikipedia for Danganronpa. So maybe like, but we like, no, I didn't stop them from Googling. So it's not just the wiki that could have been used, but like the fact that they said, I don't think this is an English word when it's files.
No, exactly. Now, to be fair, the other guesses that were available, like some of the other things they tried to consider, like Monokuma lives or Monokuma hides are perfectly reasonable sentences to write
Yes.
about a character named Monokuma. Like, Monokuma lives and Monokuma hides are both like perfectly fine sentences that you could absolutely say. So, like, I don't really fault them so much for guessing those two. Monokuma lives and Monokuma hides. Like, those are
Monokuma
fine
lives.
things.
Yeah,
Those are
basically
fine guesses.
the only clue I gave to them is that it's something related to the game, like, and the words are related. Because
Yeah, but
Monokuma
the
fires, the
sentence
two words are
Monokuma
related.
hides could like very easily be related to the game.
Yeah, yes. Especially because there's a hidden Monokuma. Those
Yeah.
exist. And the thing is, before we move on, to explain the Monokuma wives, in the games, Monokuma is a single dad. He doesn't have a wife. So that
No.
and they were like, does he have wives? They actually asked me that. And I couldn't answer. I said, no, I can only answer after the challenge because actually that would give them a clue. They wouldn't use Monokuma wives as a guess.
No,
But I was
exactly.
dying on the inside.
So then we end up having the tribal. Now, obviously, this is the Hajime tribe going to tribal here. And this is the tribe where Sophie is on the 4-1 deficit from OG tribe lines. And it's quite interesting because we have Abe, Skylar, and Jake who are like going to prefer voting Sophie over Tanner for OG tribe reasons. But Abe is going to probably overplay a little bit here and raise his threat level, potentially starting a threat spiral out of control, which we'll get to more over the remaining episodes, both today and the rest of the season from here. But the interesting thing here is that Abe does not sit there and say, okay, this is a 4-1 vote, soon to be 5-1 thanks to my double vote, because Abe worries that Tanner, Sophie, and Skylar are a trio potentially voting him. Now, if this is the case, Abe's double vote is going to be forcing a 3-3 tie. Now, theoretically, this would leave Skylar in a swing position, and Abe still could be winning this vote 4-2. Like, it's not impossible for Skylar to still swing their way, even if this trio exists. Spoiler alert: the trio doesn't exist at all, except in Abe's imagination. But like, even if the trio exists, like, that still puts Skylar in a swing position and still a position where Abe could be winning this vote 4-2. But Abe decides to play around everything. And so first, Abe gives the vote to Jake. Giving the vote to Jake, as Abe would explain in great length in one of his video comps, is so that if there is a tie vote 3-3, just like we talked about in the episode 3 tribal, the extra vote would carry over the revote because Abe would be the target of the other side. So you want Jake to have the extra vote, make it 2-2. That is a strategy that we're seeing coming up multiple times this season, probably because extra votes are so integrally wound into the DNA of this season with the Blackened twist. Like, strategy about the extra votes is actually really starting to evolve in interesting ways over the course of the season. But the other thing is, right? Well, what if Abe needs the extra vote here in order to survive? Well, that's not the case, because if the other 4 are all against Abe, the difference between 5-1 and 4-2 won't matter. And the trio that Abe's worried about contains Skylar but doesn't contain Jake. So Jake is the person who needs to hold the extra vote to play around the largest amount of outs for Abe to leave the game. This is like actually some really, really strong play from Abe, but it's going to grow even further from there. In honestly one of the wildest plays I've ever seen, where Abe goes and tells Sophie, his target, right towards the end of the vote, that Tanner is leading the push against her in order to potentially split the other side of the vote for what could be a 3-3 tie, because he's worried that even if Jake is on his side for now, that Jake could potentially flip on the revote if it was a 3-3 vote, forcing him to create a 3-2-1.
Skylar's pronouns are they, them, by the way.
Ah, yes, thank you. Sorry. That is just like one of the wildest plays that I have seen from Abe there. Like, just making sure that there is no way for other people to like have any sort of other edge there. Now, this is going to put Abe in like a somewhat risky spot going forward because it's very obvious that Abe is trying to make a galaxy brain play there. And Skylar is justifiably going to say, like, hey, whoa, like, Abe is way overplaying this. Like, they want to be a little more wary of Abe going forward. But this was such an unbelievable play by Abe to make sure that he makes the merge. Like, I don't think I've seen anyone do a play like that in an episode, especially this early in the game, in a long time.
I think that's why Naran and Abe are in the same vote, or Naran. I don't know how to pronounce it. But I think they're in the same vote in the sense that they are good players. There is no doubt about that. But they're so big and they're so flashy that they're going to have a very hard time through their to kind of get further into their merge through their threat level, because it's becoming more of a known fact that if left unchecked, both of them will end up running this game. There is no doubt about that.
Oh, 100%. And like at this point, like we look at Skylar, they're worried about Abe, they're worried about Naran. Like we look at Tanner, Tanner's worried about Abe, he's worried about Naran. Like everyone is starting to catch on to the fact that Abe and Naran are two of the strongest players in this game. And that makes it really interesting to see where it goes from here. Because like it could go a lot of different ways, but these two players are very much starting to get into a threat spiral, and like they have to be very careful how they handle it from here. As it turns out, like Sophie goes out 5-1. Sophie votes for Tanner, the one person who was trying to save her, and it looks from the vote count like this was a fairly generic, boring tribal. But this was one of the wildest episodes we've ever had, especially one of the wildest pre-merge episodes we've ever had. And it's a shame that the vote count doesn't show it, but unbelievable. Any other closing thoughts about our pre-merge before we get into the merge here?
I really think that the players that have been laying low the most are going to shine the most forward as we get into pre-merge, because if they were able to lay low and still make it all the way into the merge, I think that's a good sign for what they can pull off if they start playing more head on, such as Naran and Abe.
Was any closing thoughts from you about the pre-merge here?
You're muted, by the way, if your phone did the thing again.
No, my phone it mutes me when I unmute, like like I don't have the mute symbol and I can't talk even with it. That wasn't me. I actually muted myself because I was typing.
Okay, but any closing thoughts about our pre-merge before we move on to the first episode of our merge?
Not really. I do agree that the vote count doesn't show how wild that was. I think that was the wildest trial we had so far.
Oh yeah, that was such a wild trial. All right, so now we're moving on to the merge, and our first challenge of the merge is my favorite challenge that we had this entire season. This is one of the challenges I've been looking forward to from the day this season started, and that is our Mono Coins challenge. Along with it, we reveal that there is going to be a Bloodbath twist, where the two winners of this challenge will send a total of 6 people to the tribal, and not everyone will participate in the trial. But the first thing that happens here is that everyone gets 10 Mono Coins, and the 2 people who get closest to 20 without going over will get the immunity and the right to select the people going to the Bloodbath. This was such an interesting social challenge because it has the opportunities for people to like make these wild betrayals by overstacking someone, trying to get people to coordinate without like risking their position in this challenge. It actually ends up being like really interesting to see the way that this challenge plays out.
And before we get to that, because we so far we've been mentioning the blackened task before the challenge. We had returning blackened that episode as Mariano was once again randomized to get the task, and Mariano got the task of sharing their trust rankings with someone, anyone of their choice. And they did, but they were also lagging behind like 3 episodes in like conf questions. So Mariano had to go through them, but at the end we just asked him, right? Ask him to okay, as long as you use the same trust rankings on the for episode 5, you're good, and he ended up using the trust rankings like chess per se. It's not that hard because we actually just share. But I don't remember. I'm trying to find who Mariano shared with because I think I remember seeing that person confessional, and they talk about how they shared Mariano's trust rankings.
Yeah, we had like a couple of people like Mariano's test rankings end up making their way around at least a couple of different people here. So like this one is catching up to Mariano a little, even if it wasn't revealed to be a blackened task. It was showing up as being like, oh, that's interesting. Like the fact that Mariano is just sharing his trust rankings. That's strange
It was
behavior.
with Nara. It was with Naren. Naren? No.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
However you're saying it, we've been saying it a couple different ways, but however you say it, Naren, however we're supposed to say the name, ends up getting the trust rankings and passing them around a little bit. Again, like we're showing the fact that Naran is very much one of the main characters of this season. Like Naran has such main character energy at this point in the season.
So yeah, the tests are getting difficult, more and more difficult. This one's at first sight, you don't think it's hard because you just share your trust rankings. It's just that doing the test is not hard, but the consequences, and we'll probably be seeing them later as we keep progressing through the season. The consequences.
No,
So
exactly.
yeah,
like
the challenge now.
and like the consequences of that turn out to be interesting, especially as Naran ends up getting pushed over here. Naran is going to get like 3 coins from Maddie, 2 coins from Mariano, like a bunch of coins from a bunch of different people. Ends up going over with 23. And then Frost is also going to end up going over here in large part thanks to receiving 9 coins from Cat. Like Cat single-handedly took Frost from 18 to 27. Which makes
Legend.
it very interesting to see the way that played out. And our 2 immunity winners here are Mariano's 18 and Maddie's 12. So there was a lot of room to coordinate to get numbers above 12, and no one fell in that range between 12 and 18. Abe comes extremely close with 11, which, makes things very interesting there as well. Like, what could have been if Abe just got, another coin or two somewhere? That would have made things really interesting. But as it is, we have Mariano and Maddie choosing the people who will attend the bloodbath.
So a little bit about the bloodbath, because usually, at least from like the planning stage and everything, like usually bloodbath, or at least from what I understand, bloodbath is a pre-merge twist, as in like one from each tribe. I think it's the sacrifices that they get from each tribe. Um, but this time we tried to give it a twist and make it a post-merge, and I was the one that suggested this way, like the two highest scores become the sacrificers. So yeah, that was like, and I always try to, like, at least this season, put a reason as to how things happen. So basically, there is in Danganronpa 2, they get stuck in a place and they can only leave if one person dies. So imagine the people that are in Bloodbath are in this place and they can only leave after someone is voted out, basically. In terms
Yeah, I mean,
of the
that's
season's theme.
yeah, like that's and so we get this bloodbath tribal, and it's interesting to see the way the choosing for this bloodbath goes. So the first person who gets chosen to the bloodbath is going to be Jake, and then we get Frost, and then Kat, and then Naran, and then Tanner, and lastly Toxic. So those 6 were the people who were chosen to be sent to the bloodbath in that order. And the plan going in that Maddie and Mariano hatch is they're going to send Kat to tribal with at least 4 people who are going to vote Kat. Now, this seems like a spot where 2 people who are working together get the chance to send the person they want to send out of the game. Bye-bye, Kat. You're now the mayor of Ponderosa. Right? Right? Oh, wait. That's not what happened at all. So
sorry, I wasn't. I didn't know if you were supposed to say something.
So what happens next as we start to look at this bloodbath tribal? Okay, so the next thing that happens is, you guessed it, Naran. Right? Naran is just always on the move, always trying to make things happen. And ultimately, Naran has been wanting to take a shot at Jake, or at least thinking about it, for a little while. And Naran starts going around trying to stir up a little trouble, stir up a little chaos within the Bloodbath 6, and basically tries to paint like a bigger target on Jake, because a lot of Naran's allies would not want to target Jake first, if we were all still in the big tribe, but they don't get to have an influence right now. And, the winner writes the history, right? History is written by the winners at the end of the night. And Naran knows, like, look, if I send Jake out here, number 1, Kat is still going to be a target. I can get Kat whenever I want to. This is my one chance to get Jake out of this game. And number 2, I can make up any story I want about why we just had to get Jake out and had to do it now. And that's effectively what happens. Like, there's a lot of scrambling, a lot of trying to figure out, like, who's going to get what vote where. But what ends up happening is that Naran, Frost, and Toxic, largely at Naran's bidding, are going to flip the vote in terms of targets. They're not flipping the alliance on its head. It's just a matter of which target on the other side. They're going against what their alliance would have wanted and choosing to target Jake before Cat in order to keep setting up Cat as a target for later, in order to get someone out who they thought might have been hard to get out. But there's also another wrinkle, and that wrinkle is called Tanner. So what does Tanner do here at the Bloodbath?
Tanner pulls a Tanner. Pretty much.
And what do you mean by pulls a Tanner?
Let me go back and reread everything because all I know is that Tanner has a reputation for being kind of emotional, if anything, and getting himself into hot water and becoming like the drama king of the season. But I don't remember exactly what happened here.
Well, the big thing that happens here is that Kat, Jake, and Tanner go and form an alliance called the Brick House and make a plan to actually force this vote to go to Rocks. And they have the vote, they have the willingness. Like, they are absolutely going to go to Rocks. Now, it is officially Kat who requests the alliance, but Tanner has fully flipped on the plan. It is Tanner, Jake, and Kat against Naran, Frost, and Toxic. Tanner is willing to take the shot at Toxic and only misses because of the blackened vote. There's a situation that happens here that's the reason we end up having to make an announcement, because Mariano has written in confessional that he wants to give the blackened vote to the Naran side of this bloodbath. But the thing is that, specifically to Toxic, but Mariano has not actually submitted this in submissions. So we end up having to issue a reminder like, hey, if you want your game actions to count, you have to do them in submissions. You can't just write them in confessional. This is after the point at which Mariano has already posted in submissions to do that. But we're making that reminder for the future that game actions have to be done in submissions because that's where it's official. If it's in confessional, that's you talking about your plan to do it. You doing it in submissions is you actually doing it. And that led Toxic to get very worried because there was about 2 hours left in the tribal and he didn't have the blackened vote yet. And we're heading to a rock draw at that point if he doesn't get it. That would have been very unfortunate for Toxic, but that also would have been that would have been an interesting moment to happen. Someone forgets to give the extra vote. They're not allowed to communicate and tell that it's been forgotten either, because the 6 at the tribal are not allowed to communicate with the others. So Toxic can't even tell Mariano, hey, I still need that vote. And so it's just that
would be hilarious because it'd be another Mina situation, except it actually have an impact on the outcome.
Exactly. This is a Mina situation that actually changes the outcome of the vote. And they're not even allowed to communicate. In the Mina case, I guess technically someone could have, VC called Mina in the hopes that the ringing phone would wake Mina up or something. But in this situation, they're not even allowed to talk to Mariano and say, hey, my hands are empty. I could use a vote right now. Brother, can you spare a vote? We're just sitting there waiting to see if it's going to happen or not. But eventually, of course, Mariano does, and the blackened vote causes it to be a 4-3 vote, and Tanner kind of gets exposed here. Naran in particular is looking to see whether it's going to be a 5-2 or a 4-3 vote. It is a 4-3 vote, and yeah, that's not good for Tanner, at least with like the Naran and Skylar side of the game. Skylar, for their part, is not happy with Naran when they come back. Like when all of the Bloodbath players come back, like Skylar is not happy, and there ends up being a little bit of words exchanged in some of the Alliance chats as Naran frantically tries to explain, no, we had to vote Jake. We had to vote Jake. It was an emergency situation. Jake was going nuts. And like, at the end of the day, history is written by the winners. Like, Naran has the chance to say it, and Jake is in Ponderosa, not able to refute it until someone joins him in the jury house. Like, I think that this could have some consequences for a while, but Naran honestly could probably get away with this. So that brings us to the end of episode 5, which is where we are right now. Episode 6 is still airing, so we're not going to be discussing episode 6 here today. The challenge has already been played. The trial has not happened yet, so we're not sure yet who will be voted out in episode 6. The official Edgit contenders list at this point in the season puts Mariano in first, Skylar in second, Barney in third, and Maddie in fourth. How do you two feel about that list? Do you think those are the 4 most likely people to win the game right now? Mariano, Skylar, Barney, and Maddie?
In terms of overall placements, no. Like, I can't see that exact being the final 4. But I think if we played this game out like with a robot 10 million times, I feel like those 4 would be the most to end up winning.
Yeah, it's most likely winner. It's not necessarily like first, second, third, fourth. It's the 4 most likely winners in that order.
Yeah, probably. I agree with that.
All
At
right,
least I think that one of the winners is probably one of them, not that this would be the final, like, in order.
All right, we'll go into our closing segments then. So remember, we're going to have a couple of categories. Each of us here on the pod will pick one person to fit each of the categories. Please don't pick the same people as each other for these. So we'll each pick a different name for these categories. Our first category is the character of the season so far, the person that we've most enjoyed watching play. Liv, why don't you start us off?
Naran, I'm sorry, I have to pick the obvious one.
All right, Carlos, over to you.
Abe. I have to pick Abe.
Yeah, I think those are definitely the top 2 picks on the board here with Naran and Abe. Those have definitely been like our 2 main characters of the season so far. I think just coming off the back of this last episode, I'm going to pick Tanner for mine, but I definitely think those 2 picks, Naran and Abe, were like the top picks on the board. But Tanner trying to make that flip happen in the Bloodbath and even though it didn't work, I think that definitely earns a spot here in the character of the season so far spot. Like,
I think
Tanner's made some interesting things
Skylar
happen.
is kind of up there too. I really enjoyed watching her play.
Yeah,
Like,
Same.
Skylar is a
the
solid
way
4.
they've been playing this season is like also extremely fun to watch, and I definitely thought about picking Skylar there as well. Let's go to our second category, the player of the season so far. Who do you think has been playing the best game of Survivor so far this season?
That's a hard one. I mean, Liv did the last one, so I guess I'm the one that picks first this time. For me, it's hard. For me, it's between Naran and Abe again. I think these 2 are the ones that are like. But since obviously I can't pick both, I'll just go with Abe again.
Yeah,
I think
I
it
think
just goes hand to hand with the last category.
Yeah, I definitely think
think-
that Abe has made some of like the absolute galaxy brain plays this season. I'm really impressed with how well Abe's been playing. With my pick here, I think this is where I'm going to pick Skylar. I think they've been playing such an excellent game. It hasn't always been the flashiest game, but it's been extremely solid and extremely fun to watch. And I really think Skylar's well positioned here. Like, their spot at number 2 on the contenders list absolutely feels deserved.
In the same vein as Elkir, I'm gonna go with Mariano because I feel like his game, although not the flashiest, has been really solid. He's pretty high on people's trust rankings. He's kind of in a position where I straight up don't see him going down anytime soon. I could see him making it coasting to the final 6 pretty easily.
Oh, exactly.
Also, one thing to mention, since we are talking about Skylar, we just hit merge, and Skylar is one of the traders that survived since episode 1. And at any moment now, Skylar can force a public class trial where the votes are read and who voted for each person.
Oh, I didn't even.
It's such a
And
thing
also,
that
that's the one
everyone,
that closes DMs too, right?
yes, as well. It closes DMs, and every vote is read like this person. Here's a vote, and that's the person who wrote it. It's like one. And the funny thing is, Skylar said that Skylar forgot that that power. And I was like, I said in host chat, I think everyone forgot that traitor is a thing.
Oh, I mean, yeah, and that
There's so
power now
many-
becomes like a
There's so
ticking
many
time bomb
advantages
waiting
of
to go off. Like that
In
power
that
could go off at
specific
any time.
situation, is Skylar safe? Question mark.
No, they only force a public class trial. They can technically vote. Skylar can technically force a class trial where all the votes are read against them.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah,
Let
it's
me
not an
just
immunity
double-check
power; it's just
it.
an information power. But it's like one that also controls a lot of the flow of information, right? And the only place you can talk is tribe chat. Like that really means that whatever the plan is going in, that's probably going to be the plan coming out. Like it's a lot harder to hatch a crazy scheme when all the discussion has to happen in the open. So like that's going to really, force the issue at some point down the road. That leads to our third segment here, what we call the Dun Chain. So this is the person in the season who, for one reason or another, whether it's they can't win the jury vote if they get there, or whether it's because there's no way in heck they're reaching the final 3 or final 2, whichever this season happens to have, they are not going to win this game. So who is one person, and I'll go around twice around the circle for this, who is not going to win this game?
Tanner.
All right,
Cat.
so with the first pick off the board, Liv picks Tanner, and Carlos, who did you say?
Cat.
Cat. All right, with mine, I'm going to say Tristan. I think Tristan has been a little too much under the radar, and I think Tristan's going to have a hard time getting the jury votes, even if he reaches the end. We'll go one more time around for the Dun Chain. Who else do we think isn't winning this game?
Let me go and look through everyone just to make sure I'm not missing somebody off. Obvious.
I would say
think
Who'd you say, Carlos?
Barney.
Yeah, I think Barney's
could
been a
see Barney
little
going
too under the radar as well.
Like,
I think
but just
I
like
think
Christian, they'll fall.
Like I
They'll
do
fall
think there's a world where
not really
Barney.
close to it.
I think Barney could still recover, but I also see the case that like he's been a little too under the radar, might have a problem getting there. I'm not completely sold on Barney being done, but I think Barney can still come back from this. But I agree, he's definitely been like a little on the under the radar side.
Oh no,
I
I'm
don't
not saying
think-
that Barney is going to be one of the next ones to go. I'm just saying that he won't go get to like final 4 or final 3 like that.
Toxic
Oh, so
has been
you're
get-
saying like Barney's gonna have a hard time not getting voted out in those like fallen angel spots?
Yeah,
Okay, that makes sense. All right, Liv, who are you gonna pick?
Toxic. I think he's gotten so many votes in the pre-merge already that reputation is going to follow him. I wouldn't be surprised to see him as a mid-merge or a late early merge vote.
I can definitely see that, and for similar reasons, I think as much as I've loved watching him this season,